If the clap is any indication, we are about to have the weirdest podcast in the history of Zero Blitz. That's one thing I know. The other thing I know is that Frank and Fitz are now getting a little bit of expertise. One of the cool kids joining us, Jori coming in. Schedule release show. We've got it all coming for you right now. Okay, Jori Epstein joins us now. It's usually Zero Blitz with Frank and Fitz, and then we've got inside coverage on Thursdays, and we're doing this little like Voltron thing where we're bringing different combos, and Jori caught I think the better end of the stick here because she gets to hang out with Frank and I today. Jori, level of excitement 1 to 10 on doing this with Frank and I, because I'm going to tell you, last week Frank and C-Rob got into like heated arguments 30 seconds in, took over half the show. Like, are you ready for a heated argument with Frank?
I will say level of excitement is 7, but I want you guys to know that we will reassess this at the end of the episode. So you have the ability to decide if this is going to be a 9 episode or a 3 episode. So tread carefully.
Glad it's not a 1. I mean, that's off the table. We can't do 1, Fitz. That's good.
So here's the thing, y'all. Like, I was just gonna start by talking about me. So there's this thing. Like, I decided I want to get like abs. Like, I'm convinced I want my abs to have abs. Like, I
thought you said abs, like dating apps. Anyway,
no, like abs. Like Ryan Reynolds, sort of like bang, gang, 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 gang. Like, I want abs. So I hired this buddy that has worked with a bunch of people in Nashville, and he's got me on this whole like diet plan and workout plan. It's all very complicated. Like, I'm eating very particular things at very particular times. But as you can both appreciate in our friendship and time working together, one of the things is the only thing I get to drink at all is water. 24/7, the only thing I'm drinking is water. So I haven't had coffee. I haven't had energy drinks. I haven't had anything with a fake sugar. Everybody's like, oh, just put a packet of like whatever and flavor the water. No, can't have any of that. Can't have any artificial sucralose, any of that. So like I am in the middle of this withdrawal thing that like I don't even know if I can bring a 10 in it. Like I'm going to try and bring a 10 in energy, but without this like the, 7,000 milligrams of caffeine pumping through my veins, Frank, I don't even know what the hell I'm going to do.
Yeah, you must be irritable. You might be the one arguing with me like C-Rob did last week. You might be just randomly yelling.
I can hear Fitz's volume levels like returning to the level of the rest of us. It's kind of interesting if this is the difference between caffeine and not. I empathize with the lack of caffeine. I do like my morning cup of coffee, but I'm also like obnoxiously hydrated. So I really support how much water you're about to drink.
For me, it's not just the caffeine. It is more the fake sugar. I learned this because like everybody talks about caffeine headaches. I've never had those. But I like the first couple of days, I definitely had some headaches, and I drank a black coffee, didn't help at all. And so my trainer guy was like, well, just try try a little bit of a diet soda or whatever. And the minute I put like fake sugar in my body, I felt like $1 million. So I've just suddenly learned that obviously I have some dependence on whatever, Splenda, stevia, sucralose, whatever. Insert it all here because it's what I drink all day. Like it's all diet soda in my life. So like definitely a dependence there.
Okay, so I will also match you on the like having to wean off something I'm addicted to because I'm absolutely addicted to running and the endorphins I get from it. And I just found out this week that I have a tear in my left plantar fascia. I can't even talk. Found out I had a tear in my left plantar fascia. So I have to be like 8 weeks, no running, no walking. I can't do like most of the things I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, well, how am I going to get my endorphins? And my boyfriend's like, you're not for the 8 weeks. And I'm like, wait, that's a terrible response. He's like, what, do you want me to lie to you? So hopefully our listeners have some great biking recommendations or something. But so Fitz has no caffeine. I have no running endorphins. Frank, what's your issue over here?
Your guys' addictions are so wholesome. Like, I'm not going to list mine. I don't think that's good for the show. But yeah. All you
have to do is look at his NFL and betting analyst.
I'm so
Yahoo
addicted to
Sports.
running now. That ain't me. No, that's not the one I'm hooked on. So we'll just get onto the show, I guess.
Yeah. By the way, Jori, I share that's the other thing I had to give up. Like I've been throttling too hard on Orange Theory for so long that one of the things I have to do is actually get rid of that for a while. So I've got a month no running.
God, you guys are silly. Get on it. Just stop.
I don't know.
Just freaking
You're right,
stop.
Frank.
Frank. This is such a Mr. Rogers conversation right now. Like, oh, I just work out too much. I'm so addicted. What? Get on. Just get out of here. Both
After
of you.
15 years on a tour bus, if the worst addiction I have is coffee, energy
Right?
drinks, like I think I'm doing pretty well. All right, let's get to the actual episode as you guys are ready for schedule release talk. Before we get to schedule release talk, we're going to go through and give you our top 10 games of the year. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll look at all of that. But a couple of pieces of news and notes. Number one, I got to get everybody's thoughts on the Giants' new uniforms because they are trash. And if you don't think the Giants' new uniforms are trash, you're either colorblind or you have no sense of fashion, Frank.
You're so wrong about this. Like, I like this. I like the throwback to the history. I actually like the stripe in the middle. The helmets are really cool. Like, yes, things were kind of goofy in 1928 or whatever they're throwing it back to, but that's part of the charm. I like these a lot. I think they're awesome. The pants are a little weird because, it doesn't really match with the jersey or the helmet, but whatever. You got to give them some leeway. Again, we're working with 96-year-old fashion. I like it. I think it's cool. I can't wait to see them in it. If I was a Giants fan, I might even buy one if they had a player worth buying one for. I think it's cool. I think it's great. I give it a thumbs up. I know I'm on an island there, and I'm good with that.
Okay, so the island that I'm on is that I know I have no fashion taste, and I also don't care about uniforms. Two unpopular opinions. I'm like, I care more about the football, and it doesn't really influence the way I watch the game, what they're wearing.
Okay, so Jori, that is
I
true.
know,
I'm just saying.
I know it's annoying. No, but fans go crazy for uniforms. I used to make fun when I covered the Cowboys. I used to make fun of all the writers who would be like, "Oh, they're doing navy jerseys on white pants this week," and they were like so excited to get their tips from the equipment staff. And I'm like, "Do people care?" But let me tell you, people cared. I just don't.
Yeah, I think Giants fans care because they're all apologizing for their team right now because these jerseys are so god awful. Like, there's a reason some things were left 96 years ago. Okay, speaking of the Giants, though, we also do have some Giants news because we have Hard Knocks, the training camp edition we're used to, but now we get the Hard Knocks offseason with the Giants. Like, I'll admit my ignorance here, Jori. I didn't even know this was coming. I didn't know there was another Hard Knocks about to come around the corner. So, A, I was floored that it was happening, and B, man, it feels like in an offseason where we saw the draft conversation, we see Saquon go, like, this is a heck of a get for the NFL to have the Giants be the offseason Hard Knocks edition.
So I think my question will be, what kind of access are we actually getting here? Because, again, I'm just going to be the grumpy old woman this entire show, apparently, but I struggle with some of these Hard Knocks episodes that are like great cinematics, but not actual access and clearly a very sanitized storyline. And maybe this is, again, just the reporter in me who's like, let's have a little more nuance in what we're reporting on. But if you're not showing us the Saquon stuff, if you're not showing us the debates over quarterback, then I think you're going to lose a lot of credibility about how much access you have. Like, to just show us what it looked like when you went to Malik Neighbors' pro day, but not show us all the work you did on quarterbacks, I think would really tell us a lot about who is driving the show and what the agenda is here. And I mean, you guys are probably more up to date on the Patriots documentary than I am, but again, sort of like pro Robert Kraft, anti Bill Belichick era slant that we had there. I think it's important for us as an audience when we watch these documentaries to be like, what are we seeing, but also what are we not seeing and why?
I couldn't agree more. I think this could be the best season of Hard Knocks if they give authentic, honest access. If we're in on, hey, we're trying to trade up for the third pick to get Drake May or whoever it was, probably Drake May. And what does that mean to Daniel Jones? What do we feel about Daniel Jones? We all know NFL teams have control, final say, basically, over a lot of the NFL film stuff. That's why we see very sanitized versions of Hard Knocks, the regular Hard Knocks. What are we going to see here? Are we going to see the real stuff, or is it just going to be, wow, Malik Neighbors is awesome, and then we see Joe Shane playing his acoustic guitar for 5 minutes? Like, we know that Hard Knocks has all these kind of dumb little vignettes about, I don't care about that with an off-season episode or season. I want to see the real stuff. I want to see the phone calls that are made. I want to see the decision-making process. That's what I want to see. If it's just kind of Hard Knocks, but it happens to be in March, I'm not interested in that. Give us real access. I'm very skeptical because NFL teams treat stuff like this like they're another branch of the military. I've always been annoyed by this. They're still an entertainment business and they don't realize that. But we'll see. That's all I'll say is we'll see. I hope that they give us the real stuff and not just the, hey, Malik Neighbors awesome. Like, no, like let's get down to business here.
I also feel like we've had like a few straight years where the first episode of Hard Knocks is fairly interesting, and then every episode after that is like progressively more sanitized. So I think we need to be careful about judging it off of the first episode too.
I'm going to be honest, guys. Hard Knocks is trash, and Hard Knocks has been trash for several years. And realistically, this all goes back to, I mean, Jori, you talked about the integrity you want as a journalist. Well, I'll talk about the integrity I want as a fan, because I was as excited as anybody in the world when Hard Knocks was covering the Raiders, and it was the year of Antonio Brown. The fact that they glossed over, didn't show, didn't give any details, basically ignored one of the biggest stories, not just in football, but in all of sports. And the fact that they showed us nothing week in and week out about that, the fact that they avoided huge storylines just to simply make sure that everything was roses, showed you that the name of the show shouldn't be Hard Knocks. It should be Soft Knocks. It's a joke by the NFL. It's a joke by HBO. It's a joke by everybody involved. And it's unfortunate because, to both of your points, if they actually invested just a little bit in giving us just enough of an insight, like some of those draft videos do that we see every year, like the Cardinals did with their how we maneuvered through the draft, you can find ways to tell interesting stories and still tell stories that are relevant. Hard Knocks has not done that for years. I'm out on the show. I have not watched it since the Raiders episodes. I will not watch it until they show that they're actually looking to cover something.
Yeah, I've watched out of obligation. I agree with you completely. I think Hard Knocks is kind of a formula at this point, and this crazy undrafted linebacker is trying to make the team, and blah, blah, it's fine. I've heard all those stories before. That's why I'm interested, because this is a different canvas for them. They could do a great job with this. They could tell us, this is really how an NFL front office works in the offseason. These are the real decisions that are made. And they teased it. I can't remember the exact wording on the tweet, but HBO Max sent it out of like the big decisions, the blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, okay, give us that. Give us that, and not just, hey, we're trying to shop for air conditioners for the office. Like, I want something real with this.
Yeah, which, if that sounds like an exaggeration, they legitimately had like CD Lamb scented candles as half an episode in the Cowboys Hard Knocks a couple years ago. So air fresheners is not so far off.
You mentioned the Cowboys. We also got the announcement of a 10-part series chronicling Jerry Jones and the history of the Dallas Cowboys for Netflix. Jori, you know this team incredibly well. Like, when you hear that, what is your immediate sort of expectation from it?
I think my expectation is Jerry Jones will tell some colorful stories that have mostly been told before, but with great access. I mean, I do think Jerry will give him good access, but the thing about Jerry and access is, okay, as recently as March, I talked to Jerry at length. And so we talked to him for probably like an hour and a half, me and a couple other reporters at NFL owners meetings. And then our bosses after were like, hey, so what are you writing? And I'm like, well, I need to go back through my transcript, because it's like, I think it was 45 minutes off the record plus another period, or 45 minutes on the record and another period off the record. And then when I went through it, and I'm like, Jerry said everything and its opposite. He said Dak can win a Super Bowl. He said that Dak needs to show up in the big games and play and win games that Cooper Rush can't win. He said that Mike McCarthy, he has full faith, and it doesn't matter that it's on his last year of his contract. And he also said that his coaching staff needs to put out better game plans than they did last year. And so it's like, which excerpt do you want to pull out of context, because you can get everything in its opposite? And so I would say, first of all, God bless the editors of this docuseries, because weeding through what Jerry said and making sense of it is something special. But I also think like this is more about Jerry's life and legacy than this is about like what the Cowboys do now. And the question I will ask is, how much do they talk about why the Cowboys have not been able to make it to an NFC championship game, much less a Super Bowl, since the 1995 season? Like, I was laughing today on the NFL schedule makers call when the schedule people were saying like the Chiefs games have become like Cowboys level assets for the broadcasters. And I'm like, that is so embarrassing. I know it's true, but it's so embarrassing that the Chiefs, who have played in 4 of the last 5 Super Bowls and won 3 of them, are now to the level of a team that has not come close to it in almost 30 years. And so I think you kind of have this question of, is this going to be what Jerry did and how he turned it into a money-making machine? Or is this also going to touch on why the Cowboys haven't gotten anywhere, and if they're actually maybe a little too concerned about the amount of money they make and maybe not quite as concerned enough about the amount of football that is being played and won?
You know, I mean, Jori did a great job giving the Cowboys angle of that. I'll give the kind of sports documentary nerd angle, because I watch them all, and I'll watch this one. But my first thought was, 10 episodes on Jerry Jones? Really? We need 10? We can't do this in an hour or 2? Like, the Last Dance, my unpopular opinion that I always get dunked on whenever I bring it up is The Last Dance wasn't that great. It was okay. It was fine. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't groundbreaking by any means. But what it did was, it gave every single documentary maker after that the idea that, well, if 1 hour is good, 10 hours must be 10 times better. It's not. It really is not. We do not need 10 hours on Jerry Jones, who actually is a fascinating figure. I'll watch it because I watch them all, but we don't need 10 hours on Jerry Jones, just like we didn't need 10 hours on Tom Brady, just like we didn't need 10 hours on Derek Jeter. Definitely didn't need 10 hours on Derek Jeter. And the other thought was kind of the inner workings, the politics of the NFL. Jerry Jones has this big project on Netflix coming up. There's other Netflix projects with the Cowboys and AT&T Stadium coming up. And Netflix got 2 great games for Christmas. Do you know who's running the NFL? It's Jerry Jones. There's a big reason that Netflix and the NFL are now partners, and that Netflix got the best games out of any of the streaming services. So I thought that was pretty funny. But yes, we do not need 10 hours on Jerry Jones. I'm sorry.
Which, by the way, something that was brought up on the NFL conference call today that I thought was super interesting is, to what degree does Netflix have the capabilities set up to live broadcast a football game and do it at a high level? I'm not going to doubt them, because I think Amazon has done a fantastic job with their broadcast, and they're probably like the closest comparable we have. But it will be interesting to see, like, what is the quality of this coverage?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And who are the announcers? Well, I haven't heard anything about, like, who do they bring on the broadcast?
The NFL was asked today, and they said they're not ready to announce that yet. So.
I'm interested in that, because it's almost got to be somebody who's not under contract with anybody else. I don't know how those contracts work, if there's non-competes or whatever. If you could pay Greg Olson to make up for the $7 million he's losing for giving Tom Brady his job, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that's how it works, but all this stuff is going to go into it, and they got time to figure it out. I assume it's going to be good. Like you said, Jori, with Amazon, they've done a great job. But yeah, this is a pretty big undertaking, and if it falls flat, then the NFL is certainly going to hear about it.
Well, it's also not the type of undertaking that Netflix and the NFL goes into thinking it's a one-time thing, right? Like, the resources it's going to take to be able to live stream a football game and handle that influx of eyeballs at once to Netflix is going to be significant. So to me, this raises an even different question when it comes to Netflix of, like, is this the beginning of Netflix trying to get into some live programming, sports rights, and a bigger partnership with the NFL? Like, there's no chance in my mind that
it's a tryout. It's a tryout for Netflix. If this goes well, it's going to change things.
Yeah, they get 2 Christmas games this year on Wednesday, and then the following year on Thursday, there will be 1 Netflix Christmas game, and then a Thursday night Amazon Prime, like Thursday night football game. So this is definitely not a one-year thing.
I just wonder, at some point, are we going to see not just Christmas Day games? I'm wondering if Netflix is trying to get into the live sports business. That's which has been speculated for a little bit. Like, they're trying to get into some live rights on NBA and NHL, other sports. Like, is Netflix about to try and take over another part of the world? I have to ask a question to you guys, mostly because I don't know what the hell this word means. In our doc, it says, has the NFL hagiography business gone too far? I don't know what hagiography means, so I'll just throw to Jori, because it's a hagiography.
Yeah, you didn't throw it to me. You didn't throw it to me, Fitz.
No, Frank,
I know why. I know exactly why.
Like,
exactly.
Look, I have no idea. Hagiography? What is this, Jori? What's that mean?
Okay, so I did Google to make sure, but it was similar to what I thought, which the exact dictionary definition is the writing of the lives of saints, or biography that idealizes its subject. So it's just sort of the NFL, like, continuing to pat itself on this back with these extensive docuseries. And so Robert Kraft got the last one. Jerry Jones gets the next one. I think what's interesting is there's definitely a belief around the NFL that Robert Kraft did this in large part because he's not yet in the Hall of Fame. There's a big push to get him in the Hall of Fame before he is no longer here to see himself get into the Hall of Fame. And Jerry Jones is already in it, but also Jerry just, like, loves cementing his legacy. So there's a lot of patting on the back and self-congratulatory nature to all of this, of, like, look what I did when I sold everything I owned to buy the Cowboys and risk it, and then made not only the Cowboys but the NFL a massive moneymaker.
But there is this point for me where, like, this is a constant question, whether it's about this documentary, about the schedule, like, about all the streaming. When is the NFL going to stop stepping, like, the announcement that they're playing on Christmas Day that still bothers people, you know, and the thought that they're not staying out of the way of significant college football, like, all of these things. Like, the NFL doesn't care, because the NFL doesn't have to care, because at the end of the day, they can throw out the worst game on the schedule and the entire country will still flock to watch it. They can take a Week 16 game between 2 teams that each have 1 win, put it on primetime, and it will get better numbers than anybody. So for the question of, has the NFL gone too far in anything, my answer to that is they haven't gone too far until we all decide we're not going to watch it. And given the fact that that hasn't happened yet, like, if I'm the NFL, I'm going to keep milking the cow for everything I possibly can, because it works.
You know, Jori tweeted about this, and I almost replied, I don't know why I didn't. I got distracted I easily get distracted, but about how the NFL uses the ratings as an excuse to, oh, well, people watched on Christmas. They want more Christmas games.
Yeah, the fans have answered.
Yeah, I don't. Yes, that was a quote. That's not it. It's that we're addicted. We talked about addictions before. A lot of us are addicted to the NFL.
We found one for Frank.
Sports, yeah. We have to watch. We feel the need to watch every single game we can, and it's not necessary. At least I am. I don't know about everybody. Maybe you're different out there. Maybe you two are different. But I view it as, oh God, I gotta tell her that I can't do this family stuff because I gotta watch these NFL games because I do it for my job. It's not fun. It's obligation. But I think a lot of fans are that way where they can't stop watching the NFL. It's not necessarily that, wow, we love the NFL on Christmas every year. It's I feel the need to watch this, and we're addicted. We are addicted to their product.
Like that's not the NFL's problem, Frank. Like to that, I would say the biggest money-making day of the year for movie theaters is Christmas Day, because after presents are open, like everybody just flocks to the movie. Do people really want to go see the movie, or did that just become a tradition with family? I think for a lot of people that celebrate different holidays, there's not much to do on Christmas. So you just go like, I don't have any family. So what do I do on Christmas? I usually like volunteer somewhere and then afterwards go see a movie, right? Like, so for a lot of people, I just like, to your point, maybe it's an addiction, but if I'm the NFL, I don't give a damn. Like all I care about is the fact that like people want it, like whether they want it because they actually want it or whether they want it because they're just absolutely slave to it, doesn't really matter to me. I'm just going to keep putting product out until people tell me they're not going to watch it.
Yeah, I think the two things to note to me are, one, like the fans are not dictating this decision. The broadcast partners and the money are dictating this decision. Mm-hmm. And if the NFL simply said, we have a lot of broadcast partners to satisfy and we're trying to create as many primetime slots as we can, I think it would be a little more believable. I know Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated spoke on that this week of like, just tell us what you're doing. Like, we're not seeing through it. And I think the people who are hurt most from this, the fans are neither the ones who are helped most nor hurt from this, because the broadcast partners are helped most and the players are hurt most from this, because now you have all these players who are playing on a Wednesday in December in like the crucial part of the season. Now the NFL's response to that is, well, people play on Thursdays and they go Sunday to Thursday, so we're having all of the Wednesday teams play on the Saturday prior, and by next year you don't have the problem again because you get to Thursday, then Friday, and then you'll have all the weekend Christmas days every year as we go on. But I mean, nothing is off bounds, Frank. I know that you've been pretty vocal about that on Twitter, and I just think at some point this is even to me, and again, I'm Jewish, I don't celebrate Christmas. I'm always like, guys, let me cover the Christmas games so you could be with your families. But for me, the bigger thing is like, is nothing off bounds for the player health and safety? Like, you're just going to be okay with Wednesday. And oh, by the way, we have a Friday game in the first week of the season. Like, and also these international games, the broadcasting team was saying, yeah, teams don't really need a bye after international game, because if you play an afternoon Europe time, you actually might get home before you get home from Seattle. Okay, great. You might get home then. But let me tell you something. When we go to the NFL scouting combine or the Super Bowl or whatever, do you think the time we get home is the time by which we're recovered? No, it takes like an entire week to recover from these things, and we're not playing football. So I do think that it'll be interesting to see the product of the game, how good the football is, and also if the injury rate increases at all with some of these decisions.
One more thing on that, Jori, real quick, is that I think the NFL is making a mistake in expanding. I saw something where the Chiefs are playing on 6 different days of the week this season. It's the first team since 1927 to do so. And part of the reason that the NBA, I love the NBA, I love Major League Baseball, that they don't have quite the fervent following that the NFL does is because the NFL is very easy to consume. You give it to Sunday, yes, Thursday night, Monday night, whatever. There's kind of a limitation to its product, right? It's not on every single night. I'm a Bucks fan. To watch the Bucks every single game of the season is a part-time job. It's probably actually a full-time job. You can't do it. It's impossible. So when you start expanding to, oh, we're going to throw a game on Wednesday, we're going to throw a game on Friday, I think it actually takes away from their product, because right now part of the reason everybody loves the NFL is you don't need that part-time job type commitment to it. Sunday, great, 17 weeks out of the year, I'm in. Whereas the other sports don't have it that way. I think by expanding to every day of the week, which clearly they want to do at some point somehow, I don't think that's actually good for their product.
Look, So, Frank, I agree with what you're saying. Absolutely. Because I love the energy of being in a sports bar on a Sunday, right? And
Yeah,
I
you
hate the
can't
fact that
replicate
on
that. You
Sunday
can't.
afternoons when my favorite team is playing, usually on these games when they put all sorts of different windows out there, it's the Sunday afternoon slate that suffers. So all of a sudden, early Sunday, there were 6 or 8 games and everybody freaked out for it. Sunday afternoon, there's 2 games. The vibe's not the same. It's boring. It doesn't feel. I agree with all of that. The only thing that I would say to push back on all of this in general is that, to Jori's point about, what's it mean for the quality of football? I don't think most people care. They'll take bad football over anything. And what's it mean for player safety? I don't think most people care. I mean, I was on air at ESPN when we almost had the absolute, I can't believe it, oh my God, catastrophe nobody ever thinks is going to have on a football field with Damar Hamlin. It took 2 days before the callers and the tweeters and the bosses and everybody was saying, we got to start talking about what it means for the playoff positioning. 2 days. Player almost died, and it took 2 days to move on. So the concept of player safety really mattering, I think if you put true serum in the veins of most fans and you just said, hey, no one's going to know the answer to this question. Do you care about player safety? No one's going to know your answer. I genuinely believe you'd be stunned by how many fans turn around. They don't care. At the end of the day, they care. Can their favorite team, if there's a catastrophic injury, get through it? Can their favorite team win the Super Bowl? So, ultimately, even if the injury rate goes up, even if the football is bad, if eyeballs still go to it, which means the broadcast partners make the money, it's not going to end. I know that sounds cynical. I feel like I gave up caffeine and now I'm cynical. But there's just this moment for me where I think the human in me doesn't like saying this, but the person that covers the NFL looks at it and says, man, I just don't think anything stops this train. Even if there's catastrophic injury, even if the football is bad, even if we're stuck with a late season game between 2 teams nobody wants on Christmas Day that are both terrible, we will still watch it. And that's the ultimate problem. That's my
We're going to have a Christmas game lead to a major injury for a quarterback. God forbid, I don't want that. But if this happens, and the change will be not to stop playing on Wednesday, but to stop the hip drop tackle or have some other defensive restriction on the basis of what the business and scheduling caused.
And the league will turn around and say, hey, if you're worried about safety, we'll let you wear the head pillows. We got you. You can wear it, even though we all know it ain't going to happen.
We'll
we all know.
Play in the turtle show.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's the turtle show. We'll go to, I like head pillow. I think it sounds much fancier. Okay, so now that we've gotten this far into the episode, I do want to make sure that we get to the games that we're going to love. So why don't we at least give our first one? We're going to go through this. We're going to go through the exercise. We've got 10 games that have stood out, but we each got to pick 3, and we've got one that we're all going to go through together. The first one, I think we can all agree, Super Bowl rematch. We don't need one of us to pick that. A Super Bowl rematch is always one of the 10 best games of the year, right? So Kansas City, San Francisco later in the season, feel like that's a juggernaut of a game, right, Frank? That's one we all have our eyes on.
Oh, great game. Because both of these teams either stayed the same or improved. I think the Chiefs improved. I think the 49ers are roughly the same as long as they don't trade Ayuk or Debo. We're going to get a great game, injuries willing. I can't wait. This is the game. If you're watching one game this NFL season, this is the one. These are going into the season, I think, the 2 best teams of football. This is great. This is fantastic. This is number 1 on the list.
Great. I'm excited to see because on one hand, the Chiefs have more of an offensive threat. They're going to have Xavier Worthy on their team. They're going to have another speedy threat, which you could definitely use against a defense like San Francisco. But on defense, they're losing L'Jarius Sneed, who you really, really need to match up against all the weapons that San Francisco has. So it'll be very similar, but even those 2 pieces alone, I think, could change the calculus. And I also want to see, Brock Purdy, what can he do? I mean, these have been close games that they played. And what's fun about these games is it's not been uncommon for us to watch a game like this in the regular season and then see it again come February in that regard. And so this could be the Super Bowl preview. It would not be surprising for either team to make it again.
I need it to be a wildly physical game that takes absolutely everything out of Kansas City because a mere few days later, they take on my beloved Raiders. I think we all agree that this one's going to be great. The only thing that I would say is that the 49ers in these situations are always in a little bit of a lose-lose. If they go in and they beat the Chiefs, they're still going to be the next day on all the debate shows. It'll be like, it doesn't matter till you do it in the Super Bowl, that sort of thing. If they lose to the Chiefs, then it's going to be, they just can't get over the hump. So I feel for the 49ers, but this is definitely a landmark game. So let's get some games we love. Jori, when I say 10 games you love, the first one that comes to mind for you, not necessarily number 1 for you, but the first one that comes to mind is?
Right. I didn't want to go full Chiefs on my schedule. We'll get to some of the Chiefs games, and they have like an insane lineup of what quarterbacks will go against each other. But I'm actually really excited for week 1, Dallas Cowboys at Cleveland Browns. First of all, from a broadcasting standpoint, that will be Tom Brady's debut as a color analyst. So that'll be super interesting. We know that Greg Olson did an awesome job in that lead Fox seat. So how will Brady do? What will he choose to talk about? What will he not choose to talk about? But I think that there's been so much discourse all offseason about the Cowboys didn't extend Dak and CeeDee. They have Mike McCarthy playing on the final year. What can this offense do? They didn't get a running back, and they don't have a clear, top running back. And they are going to have to put all of that to the test against Myles Garrett and one of the best defensive lines in the league, a defensive line that shut down San Francisco last year. They were a team that really unraveled the 49ers, who have a better offense than the Cowboys in many regards. And that's going to be week 1. Oh, and by the way, the Cowboys lost Tyron Smith. They lost Tyler Biadasz. They lost key offensive line pieces. And offensive line is usually the part of a team that takes the longest to get settled in the regular season because there's so little you can prepare for it in the training camp and preseason. And so I just think this Cowboys offense that is going to have a lot of big question marks is not going to have any time to get acclimated before they see the reigning defensive player of the year come against them. Oh, on top of that, can Deshaun Watson do something this season?
Yeah.
Is he going to be rusty from his injury? Is he going to be rusty from the suspension from the time he took off? I have no clue who's going to win this game, but I think it's going to expose both teams pretty immediately.
I'm really, really high on the Browns this year. I had a conversation with our editor, Al Toby, when I was doing our rankings for my team previews. How high can I get the Browns where it's not ridiculous? I think Browns might win a Super Bowl this year. I really do. I think they're going to be great. But this is a test. Can you do it against the Cowboys? Can you beat the Cowboys at home? If you can't, I'm probably going to look pretty stupid week 1. Not that would be the first time for that. But yeah, this game's all about Brady, though. I can't remember the last time the broadcaster was the story. Maybe it was Dennis Miller, going all the way back not you two because you're too young, but for the people who remember when Dennis Miller came on Monday Night Football, that was a big deal. Oh my God, what's this going to be like? I don't remember a broadcaster getting this kind of buzz. The story of this game is Tom Brady. And as crazy as that sounds, I'm really interested to see how Tom does in the booth.
Frank, I have a question for you because I want to know, I totally understand why you're high on the Browns, and I think there are a lot of reasons after what they did last season and the talent they have to be high on them. But I want to know, are you high on them because they were that good and they're getting Deshaun Watson back? Or are you high on them despite Deshaun Watson? Where does Deshaun Watson, your projection for him, factor into your belief in the Cleveland Browns?
And it's basically for me that they won 11 games with a revolving door quarterback. I think they're really, really, really good around the quarterback position. And I have not given up on Deshaun Watson being a good quarterback. Not great. I don't think that guy's coming back. But can he be the 12th best quarterback in the NFL? I do. I actually do. They were 5-1 in his starts last year. And I get it. Quarterback wins is a stupid stat. I say that all the time. And there's some noise in that stat, even for Deshaun. But I think that says something. That they had Joe Flacco off the couch playing, winning 4 in a row to make the playoffs. Deshaun Watson he's better than Joe Flacco. I think so anyway. Maybe not. Maybe I'll be proven wrong and Deshaun Watson's going to drag that team down. But I'm high on the Browns because I think Deshaun Watson can be good. Not great. Good. Again, 12th best quarterback in the NFL. If he's that, I think the Browns win that division and they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I actually agree with Frank on being high on the Browns this year, but I also think one of the more interesting things is that if Deshaun isn't a better football player, that's going to get loud. Yes. As talented as the rest of this roster is, that is going to get loud. And Browns fans are going to have plenty to say, and suddenly he's going to see all the hate at home, and so for Deshaun, if he is in his head, if he's got the yips, as I keep saying, it's not going to help him because those Browns fans are going to turn on him this year. They've been as patient as they could be through this process, but just the football player of Deshaun Watson, I don't think he's ready for what's going to happen there.
I just want to know, how honest do you guys think Tom Brady will be about Deshaun Watson's quarterback play? Because it's interesting, this week 1, that's quite the tone-setting game for him as a broadcaster to have this quarterback who has a lot of baggage off the field and also has not been good on the field for several years now.
Yeah, I think Brady's shown that he's not afraid to say anything. I mean, the amount of shade he's throwing at the league right now in all of his podcast and interview appearances, I think Brady's going to lay into people. I don't think he has a filter. The standard is the standard sort of way of life. I think Brady's going to just rip apart.
I think so too. I think he's going to Troy Aikman, I think, started off kind of, I'm going to tiptoe around. Now Troy is he'll rip guys. And I like it. I like when guys are critical. And this might be a weird angle, but I think that the fact that Brady's so old helps. a lot of these guys aren't his contemporaries. He didn't come up with Deshaun Watson. He's 20 years older than Deshaun Watson. Like, so I don't think there's going to be that kind of buddy thing where, oh, I was drafted with Deshaun Watson. I don't want to rip him on TV. I think that works in Brady's favor too. But yes, I think that's a key question, how good Brady's going to be as an announcer.
I disagree with your line that he doesn't have a filter. I think he definitely has a filter when he wants to have a filter, but I think he can still be honest. And yeah, it'll be so interesting to see.
I think when he was playing, he couched things to always make sure that it came across a certain way. But like now, I mean, he's definitely living by the seat of his pants. I mean, the Netflix roast was another example. Like he apologized for some of that stuff afterwards. But like this version of Brady, just it feels like for me, it feels like he walks in the room knowing that he's Brady and he can say whatever he wants, and like it's just it's a little different. I think it'll be interesting. I wish he was doing a Manning cast sort of opportunity where he could just speak free flow instead of a normal broadcast. That would be my only regret, but we'll see how he does. Frank, give us a game that you love.
I mean, I'm just going to be easy here. Go with the first game because Ravens at Chiefs is awesome for an opener. At that point, we're going to be 7 months removed from football that matters. I'm not a big college football guy, as you know, Fitz. I'm definitely not a preseason guy. So to me, that first Thursday game is the first game that matters in 7 months since the Super Bowl. And we get the best possible matchup. I wrote a story kind of predicting what are they going to do? Who's it going to be? Like everybody likes talking about that. I really didn't think it was going to be the Ravens because the NFL's pattern is usually we don't want to have the best matchup. We'll save that for a Sunday night, like in week 8 or something like that. We're going to give you like second or third best matchup. But they could have picked the Bengals. They could have picked the Texans. Nope. They just went straight on AFC Championship rematch, Lamar Jackson versus Mahomes. I just think that this really sets the tone for the schedule. We're going all out. This is going to be a great game to start the year. The best possible game that the Chiefs could have got for this opener. And it's just going to be awesome to have football again. This is the game. I love it. I love what the NFL did scheduling us.
Predicting now, we're going to have record-setting numbers for the NFL season opener viewership.
Yeah, I think you're right. And by the way, I mean, the Ravens certainly are going to be rebuilt. Like they're not the same team that played in that AFC Championship game. So there's a little bit of a prove-it moment here for Baltimore too. I don't think that they can just come in. Like a lot of the conversation is going to be about the rematch, but I think a lot of this is actually about who are these Baltimore Ravens and what do they look like this season compared to last. And obviously the Chiefs will always have all eyeballs. So like just a quick tangent question, but after seeing the schedule, do you feel better or worse about the Chiefs' chances at a three-peat, Frank?
Probably a little worse just because they're being run ragged on all the primetime games, but we kind of expected that. I'd probably say about the same. I don't think it's a big difference, but I do think that being on primetime all the time and being the featured team all the time and playing on Wednesday and playing on 6 different days of the week, I do think that's a little bit of a burden, but I do trust that Andy Reid and them will figure it out.
See, I actually think that the Chiefs' insane schedule, particularly with the top quarterback matchups that they have on their schedule, is going to prepare them better for the playoffs, because I think that you don't want to get to the playoffs not being battle tested. Do I think they might lose a couple more games this year, which by the way, they weren't perfect, like from a record standpoint last year. I think they were 11-6 last year and they won the Super Bowl. You don't have to go 14-3, 15-2, whatever. And so, yeah, I think they'll be better prepared for the playoffs, but go in with plenty of losses.
All right. So I'm going to give you a game that I think is exciting. May not be the game of the year, but I love the drama on this one. Drama! Atlanta at Minnesota, right? This is all about Kirk Cousins going back to Minnesota, but hear me out. If Kirk Cousins, is it because it's later in the season, if Kirk is no longer the quarterback at that point, then it's all about Michael Penix versus J.J. McCarthy, which also has its own little bit of spin of drama there. Like, no matter what result, like if Minnesota's out there kicking ass, then everybody's going to say, look, didn't need Kirk. J.J.'s a rock star. Look at how all of this is working. If Minnesota's struggling, then it's why did they let Kirk go? And then if Atlanta is not living up to Super Bowl hype, is Michael Penix Jr. actually playing? In which case, if he's not playing well, then it'll be should they have taken J.J.? Like, no matter what happens to these two teams this season, I will get drama out of Atlanta taking on Minnesota, Frank.
Real quick, does Kirk Cousins get cheered in Minnesota? I don't know. I haven't really asked any Vikings fans that I know.
I think so.
Don't you think?
I think they'll do a thank you moment before the game. Maybe not during the game, but I think they'll do a thank you beforehand and a little montage. And
But when Kirk Cousins comes out of the tunnel, he's not going to get booed like Russell Wilson did in Seattle, right? Like, But I can't get any feel on how Vikings fans feel about Kirk Cousins and his legacy, because he clearly didn't take them where he wanted to go, but he was good. He wasn't bad. He was kind of a likable guy, but also kind of a weird guy. I don't know. I have no feel for what Vikings fans feel about Kirk Cousins.
I think he was such a good dude and gave them both a lot of fun and a lot of like community involvement and also a playoff run that it's going to be enough that he'll be cheered. I mean, not like, oh, we're so happy he's back and so sad to miss him, but I think it'll be a positive reception pregame and then like, okay, let's focus on football and everything else we got going on.
All right, we're just getting started on breaking down all the games. When we come back, we're each going to give you a couple of more that stand out with the 2024 NFL schedule out and everybody excited. All right, we're back. And we're going to keep giving you the games from the season that we're most excited for in 2024. We're going through some we've each picked, so we don't have any redundancies here. Jori, you are back up. Give us another game that you are wildly excited about for this season.
Okay, so this is actually transitioning well from the last one we had because I was really surprised that the NFL schedule makers were willing to risk having Atlanta visit Minnesota so late in the year in December, because I would think you want to maximize the chance that Kirk Cousins is playing. The NFL schedule makers did maximize the chance that Russell Wilson will be playing against the Denver Broncos week 2 at Denver. I mean, like, we're getting hot out the gate. The Steelers start their season with Arthur Smith going back to where he was fired from in week 1 and then going to Russell Wilson, where the team that decided they'd rather pay $85 million in dead cap space than have him be their quarterback in week 2. So I think this is going to be pretty insane. I think this is even like on a different level than Jared Goff and Sean McVay, because Sean McVay didn't want the style of quarterbacking that Jared Goff had, but it wasn't necessarily like a personal thing. Sean Payton was like, hey, you need to get rid of the injury guarantees that we mutually agreed to if you want to stay here, and if not, I'm benching you. I mean, it was really ugly, and the Broncos are still paying a ton of freaking money for Russell Wilson to go play somewhere else. So I don't know if Russell Wilson will overall have like a super successful season career going forward. I don't know how much he has left in the tank, but I think he's going to have quite a bit in the tank for that game in particular.
You know that question I asked about, are Vikings fans going to cheer or boo Kirk Cousins? I'm based here in Colorado. I can guarantee you I know what the reception is going to be for Russell Wilson in that stadium, and it ain't going to be positive. There are zero positive thoughts about Russell Wilson in this state, and I think that all of the frustration over the bad football that's been played here since Peyton Manning retired is all going to come out the moment Russell Wilson comes out of that tunnel. He is not even his fault, really, but he's kind of like the face now of the poor Broncos franchise and the ruins that this team is in. Russell Wilson will get booed as loudly as possible. That probably will be the highlight for Broncos season ticket holders this year, just getting able to take out their frustrations on Russell Wilson.
They're going to buy tickets for the purpose of booing.
Yeah, that'll be it. Like that, they have nothing to look forward to this year. It's going to be bad at that stadium this season. But week 2,
who's going to be quarterbacking Denver
Wilson.
week 2?
I don't know even. I don't even know anymore.
It's gotta be Bo.
I guess it's Bo, because how could you sell the fans on Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson? But it's just so ugly, and that's why Russell Wilson is the face of everything that's wrong with the Broncos. Not really even his fault. He didn't give himself that contract extension. He didn't make that trade for himself, but he's just the epitome of everything that has gone wrong with this Broncos franchise to these fans.
This game had to be early in the season because I think, honestly, there's a pretty good chance both of these teams finish last in their respective divisions. So if you want to have any juice, it's got to happen early. I don't think the Steelers are going to be terrible, but the rest of their division is going to be very good. I think the Broncos are going to be one of the worst teams in football this year. Frank, give me the next game that you are looking forward to, good sir.
Yeah, and me and you, Fitz, when we get together for these shows, I'm going to end up talking a lot about my previews, because in May, I'm just living my previews. I write about them. I'm ranking teams already. I'm studying them, all this kind of stuff. And I can tell you, I have a very spirited discussion over which NFC team should be my top team, whether it's the 49ers, the Chalk, or if it's the Detroit Lions. I'm going to say who I picked as my best team in the NFC, but they play in week 17 on Monday Night Football. And I think this could be for the number 1 seed in the NFC. It's Lions at 49ers, which is going to bring back all the memories of that NFC Championship game, which was so crazy to watch unfold with the Lions blowing the big lead. I think the Lions will be thinking about that, have thought about that every single day of this calendar year, and they're going to go into San Francisco, Santa Clara, I guess it is, and just it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a battle. I hope these two teams are healthy. I hope they're as good as we think they're going to be, because this could be the game for the number one seed in the NFC. I'm so looking forward to Lions at 49ers week 17. Going to be a great, great game.
No, I completely agree with Frank. It wasn't just that the Lions lost the NFC Championship ultimately to the San Francisco 49ers. It's that they took a 24-7 halftime lead and then let the 49ers score 27 points straight. I mean, it was just like the entire city of Detroit finally had the hope it hadn't had in so many years, and the balloon was just completely deflated. The football was not deflated, but the balloon was deflated, so that's good at least. I mean, I'm excited about this, and I also think by then we'll have a sense of, like, was what the Lions did last year for real, which I think it was, because 2 years ago we started to see it. And also, again, Brock Purdy contract year, what can he do? But neither of these teams go down without a fight. And to have that so close to the playoffs with, as Frank said, potentially so much on the line is really exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the games of the year for every reason you guys just said. I'll give you a different spin on a game of the year because I don't think the Chargers are going to be a great team this year. But Ravens and Chargers, I'm all in for. It's just because I want the Harbaugh, right? Like I want the Harbaugh brothers taking each other on. There's going to be the drama of the two sidelines. The Ravens are, as I mentioned earlier, in a little bit of a rebuild, reimagining. I don't want to say they're a rebuild. They're going to look different this year. I think the Chargers are in an actual rebuild, right? So what's it look like when you've got two quarterbacks that have so much expectation, two coaches that have so much expectation heaped on everything they do, but just the dynamic of the two brothers being competitive is the sort of story. My only regret is they should have pushed it a week later because it's the week before Thanksgiving. That should have been a Thanksgiving Day game. Like, let the Harbaugh brothers be together at Thanksgiving so we can experience the Thanksgiving Day rivalries all while we're watching a football game. That's the only regret I have with it. But, Jori, I think it's going to be an epic game.
Right. I think any brother rivalry is fun, but then you add in the fact that these are two brothers who have already faced off in the Super Bowl. John beat Jim then. John has a better team, it seems, going into this season, but Jim is coming back to the NFL. He's coming off a college football national championship. Like, there are so many family stakes here. And also, I don't know how many siblings you guys have, but I've got two brothers and a sister. And it's like, I have two younger brothers. The older one, Jason, I'm not saying he's a better basketball player than the younger one, Zach, but he can always beat him just because it's like that older brother competitive juice, competitive spirit, like, kicks in. And I don't know, I think you kind of have that element here, which makes it so fun and so relatable for people, even if they didn't happen to have an NFL coach of a sibling and an NFL coach for themselves.
I'm an only child, no jokes. And I will say that this is still, it's great. It's unbelievable when you step back and think about it, that of the 32 people on this earth that are coaching NFL teams, 2 of them came from the same household. Like that's pretty remarkable and always an awesome story. And I do think I like that this game is later in the season on a Monday night, because it's going to kind of be a referendum a little bit on Jim Harbaugh coming back to the NFL. How's his first season going? We have enough of a sample at that point. Is it going great? Is it going terribly? Is Jim regretting this? I'm really interested in that aspect of it too, just to kind of check in where Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers are by, the mid-November then.
All right, Jori, give us another game that you're pumped for.
Okay, this is not going to be a game between the two most talented teams or the two most playoff contending teams this year, but I am very excited for the Chicago Bears to host the Carolina Panthers, because this is not only a matchup between the previous two number 1 overall picks and Bryce Young and Caleb Williams, but it's just going to be this like painful reminder for the Carolina Panthers that the first round pick they traded away ended up being the number 1 overall pick in a year with a potentially generational talent quarterback. And oh, by the way, the Bears got Caleb Williams at number 1, Rome Odunze at 9 out of this, and Bryce Young, I don't know how much of it was his fault or others' fault. I mean, it's such a dysfunctional organization in so many regards that I think it is primarily not Bryce Young's fault how his rookie year went, but he did play 2-14, and they just feel so far away from contending that you're just going to kind of see like how dangerous these first round trades could be. So I think it's going to be almost like this snapshot of what can go right or wrong in the NFL. And oh, by the way, what can go right and wrong in the quarterback evaluation science and the way that teams build around their rookie quarterbacks.
You are so mean. You are so mean. Like you just want to see the Panthers suffer through having to watch Caleb Williams and DJ Moore and just sitting on the sideline. They're probably gonna be like 1-10 again or whatever. Whenever
is David Tepper going to throw a drink on a fan, on 2 fans, on 3 fans? Like this is the type of game that I would be like, David Tepper needs to be behind glass for. Watch out.
Yeah, I don't think anything you said is wrong. It just reminds us as we look at the entire schedule. Remember, only one team didn't get a single primetime game. It's the Carolina Panthers, because the league looked around and said, "Nope, we're all set. Thanks, all
We're
set.
good.
Thanks.
We're
No."
fine. We're fine, Carolina. Maybe next year. We're good. We're good.
You guys come back and see us next year. We'll see what we can do for you. Frank, give us one more that you're pumped for.
I'm a little annoyed that the NFL put Jets at 49ers week 1, that Monday night game, because I don't know if the Jets are going to be who the Jets are. I'd almost love to see this game by like week 8, week 9, but I'm still excited because we didn't really get to see what this Jets team is going to look like with Aaron Rodgers. Now Aaron Rodgers is a year down the road, the Achilles recovery and all that. I'm super interested to see where the Jets are as a football team. I'm very high on them this year. Obviously high on the 49ers. They're fantastic. Great test out of the gates. It is pretty crazy that the 49ers are playing 7 standalone games in the first 11 weeks of the season. We're going to get a lot of the New York Jets very early on, but this game stood out to me just because of the storylines of Aaron Rodgers. Is he going to make it more than 4 plays? Can we have a celebration of play 5 or something like that when he makes it through without tearing another Achilles? I'm just interested to see this Jets team. They could be great. They could be terrible. They could be anywhere in between. And we're going to get a chance right away to see a great test against a 49ers team that could clearly go back to the Super Bowl win at this time.
Yeah, I think 3 things. One, the 49ers should be a much better team than the Jets this year, and particularly in week 1. 2, that said, the Jets defense was good last year, and they were good despite having no hope to win, and now they can be good with hope to win with the quarterback. 3, this is such the NFL being like, we need Aaron Rodgers to be healthy for a big game. I was cracking up today. So we're talking to Mike North, who's the NFL Vice President of Broadcast Planning. He's the guy in charge of all the algorithms. He ran through hundreds of thousands of algorithms to ultimately get this schedule. If you were wondering, it came through the algorithmic abyss at 4 a.m. on Sunday, and they're like, this is the one. But he literally goes today, he said, Jets kind of owe us one. We were all in on the Jets last year, and for that guy to last 4 plays was disheartening for many of us. And I was just cracking up, like, for Aaron Rodgers, who some of you might know, he's a fan of some conspiracy theories, sometimes peddles them himself. And then now it's almost like they were like accusing him of this conspiracy to ruin their schedule. Like, you think he wanted to have that injury? You think the Jets wanted this? I was cracking up that they're like, yeah, the Jets 3 games in 10 days at the beginning of the season, all these prime times, like crazy travel. Well, they owe us after we put them in prime time so much last year and they didn't deliver. Which, in fairness, while they couldn't stop it. I mean, 1, they could have protected Aaron Rodgers better with an offensive line. And 2, they could have just not played Zach Wilson as much as they did. So the Jets did kind of screw the NFL a little bit in that regard.
I'll just say that Frank and I, in a later episode, are going to take a handful of teams with the over-under number, and we're going to do a little contest. We're going to put a little cash on it because as hot as he is on the Jets, I'm the opposite. Like, when's the last time the Jets locker room found a reason to implode and resisted it, right? Like, it's just chaos is not something that anybody there seems to handle well, and I think there's a good chance for chaos. I also don't care whether they're talking about Kirk or Aaron. I don't like old quarterbacks coming off a bum Achilles. I think it matters more. So I'm the opposite on all of this, but I don't want to bury what Jori just said. Jori, because I'm an idiot, like, so why did this algorithm, when it popped out, why did this algorithm get the seal of approval? Like, it's Sunday morning out of the hundreds of thousands that they've tried.
Yeah, so they talk about it being, competitive fairness is what they say is their number one factor. You can decide whether or not you agree that. Hans Schroeder, another one of their VPs, told us, quote, we see a lot of great schedules for television that would be dynamite, but the game's the most important thing in making sure we're doing the right thing for 32 clubs. So, you do look at travel. You do look at when people's bye weeks are. You do look at, okay, you got Fox wanting this, CBS wanting this. Now you have Amazon and Netflix and ESPN, all of their different partners. I think that there's some differences in rules now where like CBS can have some primetime NFC games or some top premium, I should say, NFC games. So, for example, like the Cowboys and the Eagles, one of their games are on Fox this year. The other is on CBS, which CBS hasn't had that game in decades. So there are all these different factors of everybody they're trying to make happy. They say the ultimate deciding factor is competitive fairness. I will tell you it is money. You can decide if you think it's either of those or something else.
Do they assign a letter grade to different games? Because in my mind, in the algorithm, they're going into a computer and they're being like, this is an A+ game. And then when they ask the algorithm to spread it out, it's like, okay, we want some C games here, some F games here, some A games there. Like, are they doing that, or is the computer just randomly figuring that out?
No, it's a great question. While I don't know if they're using letters or numbers or colors, whatever, they were talking about in the sense of like, okay, they knew they wanted to give the Cowboys-Eagles game to to someone who they were trying to give a gift to. And in this regard, it was CBS 425 rather than Sunday night primetime. But they view that as like a premier spot because it's still an afternoon game. It's not a 1:00 game, and it's giving a broadcast partner who doesn't usually get it something. And so I do think they sort of put in all of those rules in the code of here are the types of things, like here are the matchup. Here's what can't happen. Here's what can happen. Here's what's more preferred. Here's what's less preferred. And then once you start to get them, they're taking that to Roger Goodell last week. They're taking the different possibilities. He's telling them like, no, I need you to add this rule to the algorithm. I need you to take off this rule. And then you keep spitting them out.
God, it's just wildly interesting to me.
It's so interesting.
Now that's what I want. Like, I want a whole documentary on that. Show me
10
the
parts.
schedule being made. That's what I want, is that documentary. All right, I'll give you one more game as we wrap this up that I'm excited about. I cannot believe that it made it all the way to this level because I think, hear me out, as much as everybody loves Cincinnati, I think we're kind of sleeping on the Bengals right now. So Bengals at Chiefs, because let's be real, like the expectations were so high for Joe Burrow. As Frank and I have said a few times, given the way the last couple of seasons have gone, his career's gone with injury, I think we're at that spot where it's like, okay, I know everybody knows that if he's healthy, the Bengals can be a Super Bowl team. If he's not healthy, we need to start just being open about the fact that injury prone is an acceptable way to describe the career so far of Joe Burrow. So to me, like the Bengals are in a spot where they should be a Super Bowl team this year. They should be competitive with the Chiefs this year. Like the Bengals should be one of the best teams in the AFC. They should be able to take it to Kansas City. And if they can't, then you're going to have to reimagine everything that's happening for the Bengals. So Bengals Chiefs, wildly interesting to me because I think this year there is actually, I know he never feels it, I think there is pressure on Joe Burrow. There is pressure on the Bengals to finally deliver, Frank.
Yeah, and with Burrow, you know, he had his first press conference talking to the Bengals reporters after, you know, he started his throwing program this offseason and all that. Said he still has pain, but he's like, yeah, it's normal, rehab. I've done the ACL before. Okay. And then he said he's researched this and no other quarterback he could find has ever had his injury, which is basically a wrist ligament. And that scares me a little bit. We don't know that Joe Burrow is going to be back all the way. And that's one of the reasons I thought Bengals Chiefs would be week 1 because there's just gonna be such curiosity at Joe Burrow early in the season. We also forget how hot this rivalry was a couple of years ago. Burrowhead and Kelsey calling the Cincinnati mayor a jabroni, and it was just a great rivalry that kind of took a 1 year off because the Bengals weren't very good last year due to injuries. But very interested in this game. Very interested to see how Joe Burrow looks this year. Obviously, I hope he's 100% because when he's healthy, he's one of the best in the league.
Right, it is difficult because I think when you look at what Joe Burrow did and what the Bengals did even when he was healthy last year, I mean, they were 5-5 in games he played last year. I still think he's one of the most talented and capable quarterbacks in the league, but he lost Brian Callahan as offensive coordinator. I understand that head coach Zach Taylor is really the head of the offensive operation there, but I do think that you have a lot of moving parts in Cincinnati. And I mean, I visited them last year in training camp. I left so high on them. The day after I was there is when Joe Burrow strained his calf and sort of started rolling and spiraling out of control from there. But it just feels like they have so much potential. But I feel similarly with the Bills that there does get to a point for some franchises, not all, and maybe the Bills aren't there yet, that if you don't max out at some point in your window, then your window goes away. And I just don't know how much longer that window is open for in Cincinnati. I don't know, is their defense going to be better this year because it struggled last year?
I think the biggest difference between the Bills and the Bengals is that Bengals fans have been able year in and year out to say, yeah, but Burrow just wasn't healthy. But you're right, Jori. They've started slow with him. Everybody excuses the slow starts, and then the injuries are real. And so, at some point, if Joe Burrow is going to be who we all thought Joe Burrow was a couple of years ago, it's got to be that moment. So I am hopeful that for the overall competitiveness of the AFC, I'm hopeful that the Bengals can rise up and be that competitor. And certainly they believe they can. Otherwise, they would have traded T. Higgins coming into the draft, right? They believe they're in their window. So in my mind, go out and prove that you're in that window. I'm sure we missed some games. In the grand scheme of things, I'm sure you guys have opinions on games we left out. You can tweet us if you want to. You know where to find us. It's all of What? No, you
I was
want the
just
tweet
saying-
story?
I was just saying, yeah, do it. Tell us what
Jori
we
wants
missed.
she wants the heat.
Engagement
Jori
is
Epstein
good.
is
Good.
like, get her at Jason Fitz and then at Yahoo Schwab, because was at Frank Schwab taken? Is that what we're dealing with there, Frank? Like,
I'm just a
at
company
Frank
man.
Schwab wasn't there?
I'm just a company man, Jason Fitz. Company man.
I don't know how I feel about
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Fitz,
you
why
know.
don't you have that degree of Yahoo pride? I bet Yahoo
I
Fitz
know.
is available.
Probably because
if somebody else has that, I'd be really shocked. I'd be wow. That'd be a heck of a story to pursue.
yeah, I had to fight to get at Jason Fitz, and I was an early Twitter person. So like, look, you got to make sure like everybody steals my last name. Like it's only Fitz, but every Fitzsimmons, Fitzgibbons,
I thought you
Fitzpatrick,
were
Fitz, whatever.
Fitzgerald.
No, just Fitz. It's just Jason Fitz. That's it. I don't have any other option. All right.
Wait, guys. Can I tell you something I shouldn't admit to?
Please,
Yes,
go ahead.
please.
I'm pretty sure I initially saved Fitz's name. Ever just kept calling him Fitz, and I didn't know his first name. And then I just wasn't thinking, and I saved it as Ryan Fitzgerald in my phone. And it was like that for months when we first started working together. And I
great.
have to
That's
find the screenshot I sent C-Rob at some point. I thought your first name was Ryan and your last name was Fitzgerald, and it turns out neither of those are accurate.
That's good. No, which is why, by the way, when I get introduced, everybody's like, "Hey, what's your name?" I always introduce myself first and last because everybody calls me Fitz, but it gets confusing. Then people are like, Chris, Vince, like, what is that? What's your first name? So like, that's why I'm always like, hey, I'm Jason Fitz. Everybody calls me Fitz. I go through that whole rigmarole every time to try and avoid that. Should have done that with you, Jori. Should have done that.
Yeah, clearly.
C-Mac will be back, by the way, with the exempt list on Tuesday. Everybody remembers his name, Charles McDonald. It's fine. It's fine. I'm going to go drink more water, and it's
I
just
have
going to
no
be...
excuse because like you have normal names. I have an abnormal name. So yeah, carry on.
That is fair. That is fair. Frank, maybe just work on getting Frank Schwab. That's all we ask. Frank's just sitting there waiting for us to stop. He's like, just end the episode.
He's
Fine,
like,
we'll end it.
can I go eat lunch?
Yes, lunchtime here in Denver.
Oh, how did we score, Jori? You said it would be between a 3 and a 9.
I'll give us an 8.5. That was
Ooh,
fun.
I'll take it. That's better than I did my
Oh,
college
yeah, I don't
want
to put us at straight up 9 because I feel like it's important that we have room for growth, but I enjoyed that. It went by quickly. I actually just looked at my recorder because I'm like, it's already time.
Well, look, 8.5 is I'll take an 8.5. I think that's better than both Frank and I did combined in school. More Zero Blitz next Thursday, by the way. Jori, she won't be here next Thursday. She's going to be, anywhere but here. But we'll keep the rotation going. C-Rob comes in. We'll see if C-Rob can get us to that 9. We'll see. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody.